All right, I'm going live. Hey everybody, welcome to this week's live chat. I'm super excited to talk to you about machine quilting with rulers. I have a whole presentation on how to figure out if your machine is a high shank or a low shank, because that's one of the most commonly asked questions when it comes to rulers. Plus, it just so happens that Creative Grids is releasing all of my rulers in low shank versions. So for those of you that are on a low shank sewing machine, you can finally get the rulers if you've been waiting for those. So we're going to kind of talk about that. Then of course I'm going to answer your questions live, and we're just going to have a great half an hour chatting. But I want to tell you I've got a new guest in the studio. So Jessica is coming on to help with the chats. She's going to kind of monitor the chats, write down some questions, just kind of all around help me figure it out. So if everyone wants to give a little wave. So it's really nice that these chats have just been growing, and it's been so fun. So bringing a little help on. So if you have any questions, be sure to leave it in the chat, and she'll kind of keep monitoring that for me, and we'll address them at the end. So looking forward to that. So for this chat, I have, of course, a little slideshow or videos to show you, but I also have a handy tip on how to figure out if your machine is a high shank or a low shank. So let's just get right to it because we got a lot to cover. First of all, I'm excited that all my rulers are now available in low shank from Creative Grids. So I have 9 rulers in total. We have them in the 1/4 inch thick acrylic and then the low shank version. And it's really kind of fun. This just launched. In fact, it's still a pre-order. And if you want to check out the link in the description box, you can find all the information about that. So, but what is a low shank and what's the difference and why does it matter? I'm so glad you asked because that's what we're going to talk about today. So first of all, if you've ever purchased a ruler and got home and it didn't work in your machine, it could be that you purchased the wrong ruler for your type of machine. So what is this high shank versus low shank? Basically, to give you the anatomy of a sewing machine, the shank is the metal post in which the presser foot attaches to. And so that shank is going to determine, or the height of that shank will determine whether your machine is a high shank or a low shank. So basically, wherever that screw attaches your foot to your machine, if it's high enough to allow the clearance of a ruler, then it's a high shank. If it's lower, then it's a low shank. We're going to definitely talk about that. But how do you determine whether your machine is a high shank or a low shank? This is such a hard question to answer because every machine is different, even within same brands. So you could be like, I have a Janome, is it a high shank or a low shank? It depends. So even within brands, they have different ones. And there's also other types of feet. So I know those of you that have Bernina have a different foot attachment. So it really depends on the type of machine. So you would want to check with your sewing machine manufacturer, but there is a way that you can figure it out on your own. And I have a little video here that I put together for Creative Grids. And so there you can see that's the shank and that's the hole that holds my presser foot in. So I have my foot in the down position. This is the important part. You want it in the down position. And we're going to measure the distance between that hole and the bottom of our foot. So here I'm using my slim ruler just because I know that that middle line is about 1 inch. And if that hole where the screw goes into your shank, if that's about 1 inch or more, then you have a high shank sewing machine. That means there'll be enough clearance for your ruler underneath that screw that holds it in. So here you can see I'm measuring it. Again, super important, the foot is in the down position and I have about 1 inch, so I know that it's a high shank. Now this one's a little different. This one is a low shank, and you can tell that it's not up to the 1/2 inch. It's about, or up to the inch mark. It's about 1/2 inch above the bottom of the machine. So that means when I put my foot on and I put that screw on there, I'm not going to have enough room for clearance for my ruler. So this will really come into play, especially if you have curvy rulers or you have cutout rulers, because as you work your way around, you're going to run into that screw and it won't be able to nudge up right against your foot and give you that beautiful quilting. So if you measure it or you're not quite sure, I have a little easy way to find out. So if you have 2 rotary cutting rulers, any kind of those Creative Grids rulers, stack 2 on top of each other, and that's going to approximate about the 1/4 inch thick acrylic that you might have. Then put it on all 4 sides of your foot and see if it will touch the foot. If it does, that means you're probably going to be good to go on the high shank ruler, or your machine is probably a high shank sewing machine. If it doesn't, if it runs into or hits a screw or you can't nudge it right up next to it, it's probably a low shank machine. Again, this isn't like the end all, determination, but it's going to be a pretty quick indication whether you're going to be able to use those rulers or not. Because nothing is more frustrating than finally picking up the ruler, finally buying it, bringing it home and then having it not work. We want to make beautiful quilting designs with our rulers. We don't want to get frustrated. So the difference between the rulers, you can see here on one side is my slim ruler, the high shank or the 1/4 inch thick acrylic. Don't worry, we're going to talk about where you would use these, but I'm just showing you the difference. And then on the right is the low shank. So it's about an 1/8 inch thick. So about half the thickness, and it's going to give it that lower profile that will allow it to squeeze under that screw and right up against your foot. So that's the visual difference of the two. So let's talk about why you would use each one and what machines they're for. Again, I kind of want to put the disclaimer, this is just a generic informational video. You might want to check the specifics about your machine, right? So just to put that out there. But when you hear somebody talk about high shank rulers, or maybe even long arm rulers, really what they're talking about are rulers that are 1/4 inch thick acrylic. So these are going to be those thicker rulers. And that higher profile keeps the ruler from slipping under the foot. So if you think of a long arm, most long arms have a hopping foot mechanism or kind of moves. What we don't want to happen is a thinner ruler that's going to slide under that foot and in between the needle and the quilt, because you'll break your ruler, you'll break your needle, you might pee your pants. I mean, it's never happened to me, but you know, for a friend. Anyway, so I don't want to use those thinner rulers on those types of machines. So these are for most long arms. In fact, I would say every long arm, but I can't make a blanket statement like that. There's a very, very good chance if you're quilting on a long arm, whether it's a sit down or a stand up, you're going to use the high shank ruler or high shank sewing machines. Okay, again, it's going to keep that ruler from sliding under and breaking your machine. All right, so let's talk about low shank. So the low shank rulers are obviously thinner. They're the 1/8 inch thick, and they're that lower profile so it can nudge up against the foot. This is going to be great for low shank sewing machines where I can't use a thicker ruler because it can't fit under there. So that means that I can't use a 1/4 inch thick. I can definitely use the low shank ones. And so that's going to allow me to use rulers even though I have that type of machine. So I'm not going to use my low shank rulers though on my long arm, again, because we need that thickness to keep it from going under the foot. So here's some frequently asked questions. Can you use a low shank ruler on any machine? Right, so if you think about it, if I have a high shank sewing machine and the foot is down, can I use a low shank? The technical answer, I suppose, would be, yeah, sure, you can. But definitely not if you're using a foot that has a hopping motion, right? So in general, it's just better to get the high shank rulers that fit your machine, but you can technically use it. Just be very, very careful because you don't want it to slide under that foot. I know I seem to be harping on that, but let me tell you, it will just save you a lot of headache. It just takes once to throw your machine out of time and all that, so just get the higher shank one. But here's also the other question that's asked a lot, even in the live chat or the chat before we went live talking about it. Do I need a special foot for my machine? So when you're quilting with rulers, you do kind of want that special ruler foot. So most sewing machine brands make one for your machine. There are some add-ons after the fact that you can get that are more generic, and it's always best to have that foot. Again, it's going to have that higher profile and allow that ruler to not slide over the ruler or over the foot. Basically, we don't want that ruler going anywhere except right next to the foot. And so if your machine company makes one, definitely get one. But can you technically quilt without the ruler foot? Of course, it just isn't ideal. So if you have a darning foot or a foot that is not necessarily made for machine quilting, it could technically work, or not necessarily made for machine quilting with rulers, it could technically work, but we want to be careful that we don't hurt your ruler or hurt your machine. So you don't have to have a ruler foot, but if you're going to quilt a lot with your rulers, just go ahead and get it. And if you have followed along with any of my videos, you might have noticed that I always have the ruler foot on my machine. That's because I like to switch my rulers in and out, kind of play with some regular free motion and then do some ruler quilting. So that just keeps me from having to change the foot out. The biggest drawback to that is that higher profile foot. It makes it a little bit more difficult to see right at the needle. But if you have taken any of my video tutorials, you know I always say look ahead of the needle in the direction that you're heading. So I don't worry too much about that. Again, you can switch it in and out if you want, but I like to keep it on there. Another reason that the ruler feet are so ideal is that they're round. So the distance between the needle and the ruler will be the same whether you're working from the front of your foot or the sides or even the back. So if you're creating these designs, these geometric designs, you're not going to get these wonky spaces between your lines. So basically that's kind of the gist of your machine, and you want to check that out. Now, one thing I was excited about with the low shank rulers is I took a minute and kind of dug up all the downloadable PDFs I've ever made for the rulers. So I know what it's like to buy a ruler and then get home and think, I don't know how to do any of this. So for the more complex rulers, I've put together free downloadable how-to PDFs, and these will talk you through step-by-step on how to make the designs that you see either on the packaging or in any of my video tutorials. I also have plenty of videos on ruler quilting, so if you're kind of thinking maybe I want to try this out, whether it's high shank or low shank, then you can definitely check those out. We've had a whole free motion challenge where I go over the different types, and then also several video tutorials. So you can find all of that information in the description box. There's a link you can click. You can get those downloadable PDFs, you can check out the rulers, and you can even see some links to videos. Or you can subscribe to my channel and go look there for all my ruler tutorials. So that's kind of the basics of it, but I wanted to leave a little extra time for Q&A with this because I knew that it would lead to some questions. So let's switch back to out of our little slideshow presentation, and let's talk through some of the questions that came up. So I know Jessica's been writing them down. I'm going to get those from her in just a second, but there were some good questions that came up on the chat before the video started. So if you're ever hanging out about 30 minutes before my videos go live, you can come over to the video and there's a chat session going on. And it's always fun to see where everybody's from and also get some questions. So there was a great question. Will the new ruler foot fit a brother? So again, I was like, oh, that's a good one to bring up because every machine is different. Every ruler foot is different. Again, check with your manufacturer and find out what they would suggest, or if somebody else has the same machine as you. I will tell you that most of the reputable brands that you would recognize the name have a ruler foot option. The one thing that I would say is a little different is if you have the Bernina ruler foot with the stitch regulated component, sometimes that gets in the way. But I digress. You want to check with your manufacturer about that to find out what works with it. So that was a question that came up, and there was also some questions about the panels, from the pillow panels from the last challenge. If you remember, I had the big flower panel, I had some little pillow panels. I will be making a video tutorial on how to quilt those. Lots of questions about that, but just haven't got to it quite yet. But you know, it's on the list, and it'll be coming pretty soon. So those were the questions that came up when I was chatting, but have any questions been coming up during this? So Jessica's got me a whole list. Awesome. Very good. Oh, I can. Brenda, oh, this is a great question. Can you raise and lower the shank if needed with thick quilts? So this is the one thing about rulers. So there are several types of feet for your sewing machine, and some of them are more dynamic hopping motion, so that's really great for thicker quilts. But for ruler feet, at least the ones that I use, it doesn't have that option. So I assume, sorry, you can't adjust the shank, but you can adjust the height of your foot. I'm going to check real quick to see if I have my ruler foot. I do. So some ruler feet, and again, it just depends. I'm going to kind of hold this close. Hopefully you can see it. So this is the foot that I have on my machine all the time, and it has a little screw right here. So a little screw, and I can use that to raise or lower the height of my foot. And that's going to allow me to work through those bulkier quilts, especially if I'm using the ruler with it. But you have to be careful because if you raise it too high, you'll get skip stitches. And if you lower it too low, you won't be able to move your quilt. So if you've switched out to your ruler foot and you're having problems with your stitches, it's probably because the height needs to be adjusted. Again, not every machine uses this type of foot, but if you do have a foot, check it out and see if it has an adjustment on it. Most machines either have an adjustable foot or an adjustment on there to find or to change up the different height. So hopefully that works. Leanne, how's it going? She had a great question. Can you stack two low shank rulers on top of each other for like a straight edge? You could. I would tape those things together though. What we don't want is it slipping. It's hard enough to hold one ruler. It's going to be doubly hard to hold two. But if you're in a tight pinch, you need that straight edge. You could do that, I guess, but I would try to secure them together somehow. It was funny because during the chat, somebody said, I always find that the ruler I need is the one I can't find at the moment. So I could see situations where you have to kind of MacGyver it up. But in general, I would just go ahead and get the high shank version. What Vicky said, what 3 rulers came together when yours first started? So my first set of rulers came out 3 years ago, and the first ones, which I have, sorry, didn't grab it, was my slim ruler. So this is a good straight edge ruler. And I have tons of videos on rulers in general, but I always think it's great to start with a straight edge because your point of contact will be the same on the foot of your machine no matter where you are on the ruler. I also designed slim so it would be about the size of your hand so that you couldn't quilt past your fingertips. One of the biggest rules that I stress in my tutorials is you don't want to quilt past your fingertips. So if I'm holding the ruler right here, I don't want to be quilting up here. So doing this kind of prevents you from quilting past your fingertips. So this was the first one. I actually had 4. I had Squiggy, which helped do serpentine lines. We had Archie, which does arcs, and then I had Shorty. So not every ruler is for every person. That's the thing I would really want to stress. I mean, I love collecting rulers, and I know some of you do too, and if that's the case, well, sure, collect them all. But, you know, maybe you have a smaller throated machine and you're a little timid about machine quilting. Shorty be a great option because it has that straight edge and it's hand-sized. So you can't be really intimidated by Shorty, right? He's fine. He's fun to hang out with. So those were the first ones, and since then I've added several. You can check out the link and see more about it. I didn't want to go into too much detail about the rulers themselves, but I do have everything from cutouts to bracket shapes to, like I said, serpentine lines and beyond. So there's some different options there. The cool thing about doing this with Creative Grids is they have that Creative Grids grip on the back. So a question that came up during the chat before that we went live was, how do you keep the ruler from slipping? Well, part of that, most of that is practice. I'm sorry, I know it sucks to hear that. You're like, no, just give me the secret tip. But it comes to practice, but also having grip on the back will help keep it from slipping, right? As we're pushing down on the ruler or using it on the long arm, we want it to stay in place, and we don't want it to shift, or our designs will look a little bit more organic or, you know, wonky. So it already has a grip on the back, but if you don't have those gripped on your rulers, you can buy grip to put on it after the fact. So I know Handy Grip makes one, there's True Grips. Basically, we just need something that's gonna help that ruler stick to the quilt, but also be able to move later on. So there's so many different products you can get, so you can try that out, and that will help kind of keep it in place. So love the grip on the back, plus the rulers I have with Creative Grids have markings in black and white. You can't quite see it, but that means you can see them on any color fabric, which is really nice. So I do love that function of it. So, you know, the idea that you want to be able to use your ruler, you want to go up to your foot of your machine, you want to be able to see where you're going and have it stay in place is always ideal. Anyway, so that was a long answer to your question, Vicki. Sorry. All right, Cecilia Vargas said, do I deliver to Hungary? Sure, I'll bring it personally because I'm ready to travel. Is anybody else tired of being at home? Yes, we do deliver to Hungary. Our website does deliver internationally, so you can take advantage of that if you'd like. Love, 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 love having you around, Jessica. Thank you for handing me stuff. All right, Kathy said, can you explain how to use the cutouts? So yes, I'll give you the brief answer on that, but just know I have several video tutorials on that as well. The great thing about cutouts is I can quilt along the inside, and I've got my ruler. What's really cool about it is our tendency is to kind of go away from whatever we're quilting. I don't know why that is. So if I'm working from the outside, I kind of have this tendency to kind of drift. But if I'm in a cutout, it kind of gives me that, you know, boundary to, you know, follow. But I also love that you have more ruler to hang on to. So if you're working from the center, like this one or Taj, and there was a question, am I going to come out with more rulers? Yes, and even another cutout. If you have that cutout, now you have ruler on both sides of your foot to hold on to. So if you're really struggling with that, you're like, I have one hand on the ruler, one hand on the quilt, this is hard to move, that cutout's gonna be really nice for you to kind of move along, give you two sides to hang on to. So one question that comes up with Sid is, you notice I have them kind of closed off. My Taj ruler is open, so you can kind of get in there. If you're working on a long arm that doesn't have the ability to raise the foot up a little bit, unfortunately you won't be able to get in there. But once you do get in there, if your machine does let you in there, you won't be traveling out. You'll be right where you need to be. So basically, it's going to work the same as working on the outside. I'm going to nudge my foot up against the edge. I'm going to push down and move smoothly along that ruler. I'm just going to be quilting along the inside instead of the outside. The thing is, though, it gets when you're learning how to machine quilt with rulers, no matter which one you're using, it can be really tricky to like pay attention to where's your hands and where's the point of contact on your foot. The thing is, it just takes practice. In the beginning, it feels super weird, like you have this weird attachment on your hand, but I promise after you work through a quilt or two, you'll be like a ruler ninja. So keep it up. I promise it gets easier. So that's the quick overall version of how you're going to work along the cutout. But definitely check out my YouTube channel, because I have everything from meandering with cutouts to creating starbursts with the SID ruler to border designs and more. So you can do some really fun and motifs even. And don't forget, I have the downloadable PDFs that you can grab as well, and that will show you step by step. It's one thing to watch in a video. Sometimes I just want something to have right next to me. Little tip, you can print those out and keep them with your ruler. That way, when you grab your ruler, you know what you want to make with it. So kind of fun there. Again, that's all the questions we have here. Any other questions came through? So I have really been enjoying these live chats, everybody. I know it kind of started from the Free Motion Challenge quilting alongs, where we were kind of checking in about each week's challenge, and it just kind of kept going. I mean, I think we've been doing this solid since January, so really enjoy that everybody is here and hanging out with me and doing these chats. We're going to keep them going, even though we're in between Free Motion challenges right now. But I was thinking of all the challenges that I've done in the past that I never got to do a live chat for. So next week, I'm going to talk a little bit about dot-to-dot quilting, which is one of my previous challenges, but I'm going to show you how it's really fun and easy to create some intricate, complex looking designs just by using reference points on your quilts. So it's going to be a quilty show and tell with lots of quilted samples. So I hope you'll join me for that. And want to just kind of tell you about upcoming events. I know that not everybody is local to Liberty, Missouri, which is just north of Kansas City, and might I mention, only 45 minutes from Missouri Star Quilt Company. I told Jenny one time I was going to put that on my awning, but I didn't, because that would be a little tacky. But if you happen to be traveling through or in the area, I hope you'll stop by our shop. But also the end of June, June 26th, we're going to be hosting our 4th annual Quilt Walk. So it's kind of like our outdoor kind of quilt show. It's a lot of fun. It's a big event every year. So if you happen to be in the area, I hope you'll make it there. And don't forget, you can download any of those PDFs or the link to what I talked about today, or to order or pre-order the low shank rulers. That's going to be in the description box below, of course. And if you have liked this chat or any of my tutorials, I hope you'll give the video a thumbs up, because it really does help other quilters find it. Well, if you have a question that you didn't quite get a chance to ask or didn't get addressed, leave it in the comments below, and I love to get on there and answer them from time to time. Plus, I know other quilters will as well. So thanks so much for joining me, everybody. I hope you all have a great weekend, and I'll see you next week, where we'll talk about straight line quilting with or without rulers for dot-to-dot quilting. So until then, happy quilting.